Welcome to the Paul Adefarasin podcast. We revisit the word, surface the big ideas, and give you space to reflect, pray, and act. If you'd like the full message, though, you can watch it on YouTube or listen on Spotify after this episode.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, you are exploring a really specific, very robust piece of source material with us.
Yeah, we are looking at the transcripts of a live Sunday service from House on the Rock, which is in Lagos, Nigeria.
Right. And this sermon was delivered by Pastor Paul Adefarasin on July 19th, 2026.
Exactly. And the mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the core message of this teaching, break down its key scripture references.
And really unearth the highly practical takeaways he's presenting to his congregation. The theme he introduces is titled, Abounding Abundance and Your Weapons of Mass Production.
Which is such a striking title, but to properly evaluate a message like this, you have to first understand the environment into which it was spoken.
Yeah, context is everything here.
It really is. We are analyzing a sermon delivered in Nigeria, a nation where, as the pastor explicitly notes in this transcript, 61% of the population lives below the poverty line.
Wow, 61%. That's huge.
And even more critical to his thesis is the fact that 79% are classified as near poor.
Meaning the vast majority of his audience is like one medical emergency or one sudden economic shift away from total financial collapse.
Precisely. So when a speaker stands up in that specific macroeconomic reality to talk about wealth, productivity, and abundance, they are directly confronting a deeply entrenched daily struggle for survival.
Okay, let's unpack this, because he doesn't begin his argument with modern economics or, business theory. He starts with the book of Genesis.
Right, he goes straight to the foundation.
Yeah, the core spiritual truth he attempts to establish is that to achieve what he calls abounding abundance, humanity first has to understand how that abundance was lost in the first place.
And he roots this entire framework in Genesis 2.1c, where God places Adam and Eve in Eden.
Which, the pastor is quick to point out, Eden literally translates to a place of pleasure, like an environment of absolute provision.
Exactly. The instruction was that they could freely eat of every single tree in the garden, save one.
He spends a significant amount of time on the nature of the deception that follows that instruction.
He really does. The pastor argues that Satan's initial strategy in the garden was not to introduce a physical threat.
Right, there was no invading army or certain natural disaster or anything.
No, nothing like that. The enemy merely shifted Eve's focus away from the infinite supply and toward the single restriction.
It essentially operates on the same psychological flaw that a stage magician uses.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like if you've ever watched a sleight of hand trick, the whole illusion relies on misdirection.
They get you looking the wrong way.
Exactly. The magician gets you so entirely focused on the shiny silver coin moving around in their left hand that you completely miss them palming a whole deck of cards with their right.
You only see what they manipulate you into seeing.
Right. I put it in the context of the sermon. It's like going to a massive, free, all-you-can-eat luxury buffet, but someone tricks you into obsessing over the one empty tray in the far corner of the room until you literally starve.
That is exactly it. What's fascinating here is how the pastor conceptualizes this through what he calls the law of polarity.
The law of polarity. Break that down for us.
So he posits that lack is not an actual physical presence. Lack is merely an absence.
Oh, interesting. So it's not a thing in itself.
Right. He compares it to the physics of light and darkness. Darkness isn't a substance you can measure or hold in a jar. It is strictly the absence of photons.
Oh, okay. I see where he's going with this.
Yeah, in the same way, he argues that poverty is simply the absence of abundance.
So the enemy's greatest weapon, what the pastor actually refers to as a weapon of mass destruction, is getting humans to fixate on the absence of a thing.
Exactly. Fixating on the absence rather than the overwhelming potential that surrounds them.
If we accept that premise, then the battlefield isn't the physical bank account or the local economy. The battlefield is cognitive.
It's entirely in the mind.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon psychologists call cognitive tunneling.
Oh, right, where your vision literally narrows under stress.
Exactly. When a human being is placed under high stress like financial ruin, for example, their brain literally narrows their peripheral vision to focus exclusively on the threat.
They physically lose the ability to see peripheral opportunities.
Which logically brings us to the pastor's first countermeasure.
Because if the primary weapon against human flourishing is an illusion of lack that creates cognitive tunneling, You need a defense.
Right. The required defense is learning how to actively override your own perception.
Which is what he introduces as the first weapon of mass production, which he calls mind resetting.
And to explain the mechanics of this mind resetting, he uses the historical narrative of David and Goliath.
But he analyzes it strictly through an economic lens, which is super interesting.
It really is. So you have two armies in a valley. Goliath comes out making threats.
And all of Israel, including King Saul and his highly trained generals, look at this giant and experience that exact cognitive tunneling you mentioned.
Right. They see a massive physical threat that guarantees their death or enslavement.
They are reacting to the anomaly, the loudest problem in the room.
But David, who is just a 16-year-old civilian delivering food to his brothers, operates with a reset mind.
He looks at the exact same data points, the giant, the weapons, the valley, and he doesn't see destruction.
No, he sees a highly lucrative, unprecedented opportunity.
He literally surveys the scene and asks the soldiers, what does the man get who takes down this giant?
And the payout is staggering. The winner receives immense personal wealth, his entire family is granted a permanent tax exemption, and he marries into the royal family.
While the generals saw a military disaster, David saw a fast track to becoming a billionaire.
The pastor then pairs this with another Old Testament narrative, right? The prophet Elisha and his servant.
Yeah, so they wake up surrounded by a hostile Syrian army.
And the servant experiences immediate panic, looking purely at the physical threat.
Elisha, however, prays for his servant's eyes to be open to a layered reality.
And suddenly, the servant can perceive a much larger, superior spiritual army surrounding the enemy.
The pastor uses these texts to argue that opportunity and threat run parallel to one another. What you experience depends entirely on which layer of reality you choose to focus on.
Wait, let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
It is incredibly easy to debate the merits of changing your perception when analyzing an ancient text in a vacuum.
Fair point.
But he's speaking to a congregation where nearly 80% of the people are near poor. Telling someone who is genuinely worried about their children's next meal to just stop talking about your problems feels dangerously close to toxic positivity.
I completely see why you'd say that.
Right. Like, how does he justify that as a practical, actionable step?
Well, he addresses that tension by redefining what a problem actually is. He is not telling his congregation to ignore reality or pretend they aren't hungry.
Okay, so what is he telling them to do?
He is telling them to recategorize the data. He states that massive problems are essentially just camouflage for massive adjacent opportunities.
Camouflage for opportunities.
Yeah. In a developing economy, wherever you find a systemic failure, you find a captive market desperate for a solution. He instructs them to manage their risk with faith. Instead of complaining about the trial, which keeps you paralyzed, your full cognitive load should be dedicated to finding the hidden opportunity within it.
But let's be real. Staring at a giant and seeing an opportunity doesn't actually kill the giant.
No, doesn't.
David still had to know how to use a sling. Recognizing a gap in the Nigerian market doesn't magically put food on the table if you don't know how to execute a business plan.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does the pastor bridge the gap between this positive spiritual mindset and actual hard economics?
He bridges that gap with his second weapon of mass production, which is mastery and skill.
Okay, mastery and skill.
Because once you see the opportunity, you have to extract value from it. He outlines a strict rule of value creation for his congregation.
This is a rule.
The wealth you desire, whatever that specific amount is currently sitting in someone else's pocket.
Okay, that phrasing sounds incredibly predatory on the surface.
It does sound a bit harsh, which is why he immediately clarifies it.
Oh.
Yeah, he explicitly warns against the mindset of theft or manipulation, and he also tells them they cannot simply pray that money into their own bank accounts.
So how does the transfer happen?
The mechanism of transfer requires you to create a product, a service, or a solution of such high quality that the person holding the wealth willingly chooses to trade their money for your solution.
He offers a very specific mathematical example to illustrate this, right? Let's call it the high-value problem strategy.
I love this example.
He tells the congregation that if they want to escape poverty, they need to obsess over the problems of people who have capital.
Yes. He asks them to imagine a financial worker in Lagos making $30,000 a month.
Which is a huge amount of money.
It is. And he says if you can study that financial worker's industry, apply your creativity, and develop a marketing strategy or a system that scales their income from $30,000 a month to $250,000 a month.
The wealth transfer becomes frictionless.
Exactly, because they will gladly hand you a 10% cut for your solution.
And 10% of their new profit margin is roughly $22,000.
Right. You just extracted $22,000 from the market, not by asking for a handout, but because you mastered a skill that solved a high-value problem for someone else.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the pastor is basically delivering a profound rebuke of selfish ambition.
He really is.
But how does solving problems for a high net worth individual rebuke selfish ambition?
Because human nature, especially in creative or entrepreneurial pursuits, is inherently self-centered.
That's true. We usually default to wanting to create the things we want to create.
Exactly. We want to write the book we want to read or build the business we think is enjoyable.
But the pastor argues that true mastery, the kind of mastery exhibited by the most successful tech founders and innovators, requires obsessing over the consumer's needs rather than your own desires.
You have to be willing to study another person's problem longer and harder than they do.
Let me challenge the feasibility of this again. Advising a struggling person to solve a $250,000 problem for a financial worker assumes a baseline of education, industry access, and capital that they likely do not possess.
That is a very valid critique.
Is he addressing the systemic barriers that prevent a near-poor citizen from just walking into a corporate office with a business proposal?
He does, actually. He addresses the barrier of capital by framing mastery itself as the ultimate currency. He uses a highly relatable domestic example to make this point scalable. He tells a story about washing his own car.
Okay.
He used to spend hours doing it himself to save a few dollars, but eventually he realized that those hours were stealing time from his area of true productivity.
I see.
So the directive to the congregation is this: relentlessly upgrade your specific skills, whatever they are, until you create so much value in your niche that you can joyfully pay someone else to wash your car.
Oh, so he is teaching them to build a microeconomy.
Yes. You master a skill, you generate capital, and you immediately use that capital to employ someone else, spreading the wealth.
So we have the mindset, which is looking for opportunities hidden inside problems. And we have the mastery, which is obsessing over solving high-value problems for other people.
Right.
But individual skill execution has a ceiling. Doing one-off jobs won't scale into the abounding abundance he is talking about. You need a multiplier.
Which brings us to the third and final weapon, brand building.
Brand building.
Yes. He refers to this as the currency of reputation, and he treats it as a literal spendable asset.
He references Proverbs 22.1, which states that a good name is better than silver and gold.
A classic verse.
Historically, that text is preached as a moral platitude, a warning against greed.
But the pastor completely flips the application. He treats a pristine reputation as a highly lucrative business strategy.
He uses two biblical case studies to demonstrate how a brand functions as an economic multiplier. The first is Jesus of Nazareth.
Yes. He points out that Jesus approached successful, transgenerational commercial fishermen and simply said, "Follow me."
And they abandoned their established businesses immediately.
The pastor argues this happened because Jesus' brand, his substance, his track record, the undeniable reality of who he was so overwhelmingly powerful that it bypassed the need for a traditional marketing pitch.
A strong brand doesn't have to convince, it persuades simply by existing.
Exactly.
The second example he uses is the Old Testament story of the Queen of Sheba traveling to meet King Solomon, which is found in 1 Kings 10.
This is where he breaks down the actual mechanics of brand execution. The Queen of Sheba was already stupendously wealthy. She travels across the known world simply to test Solomon's reputation.
But the text notes that she wasn't just impressed by his intellect or his gold.
No, she is overwhelmed by the meticulous execution of his operation.
She observes the architecture, the specific food on his table, the way his officials are organized, even the sharp uniforms of his waitstaff.
It was the flawless attention to detail in the customer experience that left her breathless.
And the economic result of that flawless execution was a massive wealth transfer.
Massive. She freely gives him 4.5 tons of gold.
The pastor actually does the math for his modern audience. That is the equivalent of nearly $1 billion today.
$1 billion. Solomon secured $1 billion injection into his economy, not through military conquest or domestic taxation, but purely because a high net worth individual was staggered by the excellence of his brand.
So what does this all mean? How does a person sitting in Lagos in 2026, dealing with inflation and infrastructure challenges, execute a Solomon-level brand strategy without a royal treasury?
It's a tough question.
Is he just telling them to become social media influencers?
Not at all. He is incredibly careful to draw a hard line between branding and what he calls hype.
Okay, what's the difference?
Hype is when your marketing exceeds your actual substance. True branding is about consistent, exceptional delivery.
Oh, that makes sense.
He uses a personal example regarding commercial airlines. He explains that he chooses a specific premium airline not merely because their planes are safe, but because they treat him with dignity.
They provide an atmosphere of luxury and meticulous customer service.
Right. His point to the listener is that your brand is the total experience a person has when they interact with your mastery.
So if you are a freelance video editor, your brand is whether you deliver the file on time, how you communicate in emails, and the precision of your cuts.
Exactly. And he gives them a very specific technological mandate to scale this. He tells them to pull out their smartphones.
Because an iPhone is not just an entertainment device.
No, he argues it is a full-scale global production studio.
He challenges them to start media companies today. Learn to edit video, learn digital marketing, and pitch those services to doctors, lawyers, and energy specialists.
He issues a definitive warning. If you aren't utilizing social media to broadcast your solutions, you simply do not exist in the modern marketplace.
He is systematically dismantling the excuse of lacking startup capital.
He really is. He is telling them that if they have a smartphone, internet access, and cognitive ability, they have everything they need to master a skill, solve a problem, and publish that solution to the world.
Let's synthesize these three weapons. The pastor's core thesis is a total paradigm shift regarding human potential.
Yes.
The foundational spiritual truth is that humanity was designed for an environment of infinite provision. The illusion of lack is a psychological weapon designed to induce cognitive tunneling.
Forcing you to stare at the one empty tray while you starve to death in a banquet hall.
Exactly. To dismantle that illusion, he demands three practical commitments. First, reset your mind to view massive problems as camouflaged opportunities.
Second, master a skill by obsessing over the needs of consumers, providing solutions so valuable that they willingly trade their wealth for them.
And third, build a bulletproof brand characterized by such deep substance and flawless execution that it magnetically attracts capital.
This raises an important question for you, listening right now. Regardless of your economic environment, this requires a brutal audit of your own attention.
It really does.
Are you currently staring at the magician's left hand? How much cognitive energy are you expending complaining about your industry, your boss, or the economy, completely ignoring the reality that those exact frustrations are the high-value problems someone is desperately waiting to pay you to solve?
I want to leave you with a final thought experiment to mull over on your own.
Okay.
One that builds directly on the pastor's ultimate goal for this wealth creation. He mentions briefly that wealth shouldn't possess you. You should possess wealth so you can act as a distributor.
Right.
But let's take that concept of distribution and apply it to a macroeconomic scale.
Yeah.
Economists talk about the velocity of money, the rate at which a single dollar changes hands within a community.
Yeah, that's a crucial metric.
Poverty isn't just a lack of money, it's what happens when money stops moving because people are hoarding it in fear. Imagine the radical shift in a microeconomy if an entire community stopped viewing capital as a scarce, finite resource to be protected.
And instead treated it as an endless, renewable byproduct of serving one another's needs with absolute excellence.
Exactly. If wealth is truly just the natural echo of value creation, what specific problem are you going to solve tomorrow? The abundance is right there in front of you. You just have to break the illusion and stop looking at the empty cup.
Thank you for listening. To go deeper, watch the full message on YouTube or listen to the full-length sermon on Spotify. Follow the podcast, and please share it with someone who needs it and leave your response in the Q&A. Kindly keep your heart on fire, your eyes on Jesus, knowing you are the exception. Grace and peace. We love you deeply.